So in stage 3, we're working with thumbnails, and it's time to start doodling. So you can see from the example from the book, these sketches are really loose, really quick, and they're just a kind of a thought process as how different shapes will combine to create different looks for this alien. So there's a bunch here, and they're not necessarily one better than the other. It's more like what the artist is trying to convey and which one conveys that the best. So for instance, if I wanted, a tough alien, I would probably go with this one at the top. But if I wanted kind of a goofy one that was, more bumbly, I might pick this one down here. Or if I wanted one that was, a little more innocent and a little more curious, then I might pick this one over here. So it's not like you have to create an amazing little sketch here to convey every single thing. It's more like just a test run. It's like auditions. It's just to see how different shapes go together. So let's go ahead and do that with our little cute carpenter example. When we last left off, we had just gotten our reference pictures over onto our canvas, but as you can see, our layer window over here is getting really crowded. So we're going to go ahead and make a folder right down here. There's a little folder button, and I'll click the little gear icon so I can rename it REF for reference, and then I can highlight all of my reference pictures by holding Shift and just clicking on my top one, holding Shift and going all the way to the bottom one so that they're all blue. Then I'll click and hold, and I can move them right into the reference as soon as that blue box appears. I let it go, and you'll see that they'll be offset. So this means when I click this folder closed, all of the drawings inside will be inside this folder. So then you can access your individual layers when you need to. Let's say I need to move the shirt for whatever reason, then I can go back in here and move it. But then when I don't need to mess with these reference images anymore, we just close the folder. If you want to turn them off just for a second, you can take the bullet point here, you can just click that and they'll be gone. Click it again and they'll be back, just in case you haven't familiarized yourself with Fire Alpaca yet. So I've got another layer here for draw, and then this bottom layer I actually don't need, so I'm going to trash that. And I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to start talking about how you take the shapes from your references and put them into your character design. So I'm going to get a color here to sketch in, kind of a red. Not that bright though. There we go. So let's look at the shapes I've gathered and see how they can fit together. So I'm not going to use an entire character right off the bat. Let's just use the overalls, for example, as a way to start combining shapes. So I said before I liked these straight legs, these wide-legged overalls. So my general shape of the overalls is going to be rather blocky and have some long legs. Long blocky legs. But then I can take a look at this cute little heart detail on this reference over here and say, oh, maybe I want something like that on my overalls as well. I don't want to copy it straight up, but maybe I can put like a little heart instead of a big heart, and maybe it's on a pocket. So there's some ideas there. Most overalls also have this like belt band and some loops, so I can put on some kind of belt here if I want. And they're not in these images, but while I was searching, a lot of them had cuffs on the end where they just rolled up the end of their pants, and I think that's cute, especially for little kids who haven't grown into their clothes all the way yet. Sometimes you have to go ahead and use that cuffing to make it short enough so they don't trip over their own pants. And so you can see that these pair of overalls doesn't look exactly like this one, and it doesn't look exactly like this one, but it's been kind of a combination of the two to make my overalls. So I can do the same thing with the rest of these images, like for the shoes. I'm not going to straight up copy those shoes, but I do like that there's a toe detail, like a different color on the toe. And you can see this is not a really rendered or detailed stage of the drawing. This is still real doodly. So I like that different toe section, and then I'm just going to put one kind of curving stripe over the top for a shoelace, and then I might put some kind of symbol on the inside, maybe a star or a heart or something, but I'll just put an oval for now. And then for the shirt, I really liked the feeling of cuff sleeves, so I'm going to go ahead and use those same cuff sleeves. I also like the repetition that I've got going on here, where I have these rectangle shapes down here, and I'll have rectangle shapes here. I'll have a rectangle shape there, so it's making her look very dependable. But she does need to be cute as well, so we need to get some curves into there, and I'm pretty sure that will come in with her hammer, because most hammers, you know, have a rather sharp forked end, and then the actual nail hammering end, right? Something like this. And then there's usually extra security to hold the hammerhead onto the handle, and it's usually fairly long, something like that. That'd be the hammer that you'd see maybe in everyday life. But this cute little girl's hammer has a rather large, more rounded head and a smaller handle, and of course is covered with flowers. I don't think I'll do that, it's too hard to draw. But I'm going to take those cute rounded shapes to make my hammer. I think I'll even round off the bottom. Well, actually I have two choices here. I can round off the bottom to make it cute, or since I have this rectangular theme going on at the bottom, I might choose to do a rectangle down there. So let's take this idea of pulling shapes from our images and make it into some actual character designs. I'm going to get rid of that. So I want a little girl, and some visual things for little girls is that we can draw a really big head, skinny neck, small body. And once you get to about here, it's already looking like a child with a large head, small body. I liked those long pants, so I might make her more like 12 years old, maybe preteen, and add those cuffs. Let's put a hand on the hip here, and maybe she's going to hold out her hammer. So there's a thumb, there's the rest of the fingers. Like I said, you want this to be quick and easy. Let's give her a little nose there. Some eyes. Holding her hammer that might have that little rectangle at the bottom. Large hammer head. I don't care so much about the shape right now, as you can see. I'm mostly getting the size down, the proportion. Here's her overalls, belt, maybe some kind of heart, and then her sneakers having a different colored toe and a shoelace. Then for her hair, I had these two images for her hair, so I can choose these long braids, or maybe I can take a shape from these shorter braids. Let's try the shorter braids first. I liked how it was wide at the top and narrower at the bottom, so I'm going to exaggerate that and make it really wide at the top, really narrow at the bottom. Won't see that one as much. And for the front of her hair, I can either use the no bangs style, or I think I will add some bangs to make that cheerful sort of personality stand out. And then the shirt, needing some cuffs. So I'm going to add a cuff where I want the shirt to end and just make that a little wider than her actual arm, so that it looks like she's actually wearing it on top of her skin and it's not just painted on. As for the collar, it might be a fiddly detail. I don't know if I want to add it. If I do, I'd probably simplify it just to the rectangles that I already have in her design in other places. And there would be my first thumbnail. So I can just take that, hit Control T, and get my move tool, Control T, and shrink it down to put off to the side. The most important thing for using your shapes in your thumbnails is that you don't want to work on the same drawing and just try things by erasing and redrawing and erasing and redrawing. You want to be able to compare. You want to see them all lined up and say, okay, which one of these do I like the best? Not just, do I like this one, do I not like this one? Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. You can almost think of it like if you go to a restaurant, you want to look at the menu generally. Like, let's say you've never been to this restaurant, you go into a restaurant, you want to look at the menu, you want to see what your options are. If somebody says, oh, let's go to this restaurant, and the waitress just says like, oh, do you want a pizza? And you're like, oh, okay, sure, pizza sounds good. But then maybe they also had, I don't know, fettuccine Alfredo, and that's your favorite, but you didn't know because you didn't get to see the options. So that's kind of what we're going for here in these thumbnails, is we want to see the options. So I can try sketching out another one, and I'm always thinking of my general keywords, that she's a little girl. So we're going to go little, cute, round. So maybe I can give her some even bigger eyes this time. And maybe I'll give her a little bit pointier nose. And since she's cheerful, I'll bring her mouth down, round out her head a little more. Normally I don't erase on my thumbnails, but since I'm not the only one who needs to make sense of this, I'll try to make my drawings a little more clear than I would normally do it. I'm going to give her some small ears this time. And let's try those longer braids maybe for her hairstyle. This time I'll have it swoosh, swooshing around that way, and we'll have these really long braids. I don't know which parts will be covered up by her body yet, so I'm not going to add any details to those. But let's go ahead and give her that shirt with the collar this time. Let's try that out. Now I'm getting this far and I already feel like she's maybe 16 with the way I'm drawing her so far, with the rather elongated head, and the collar I feel like aged her. And then by the time I put on the overalls and have those long legs, she's going to look too old. I already know that. So I'm going to abandon this thumbnail, even though I haven't even finished it. But the important part is that I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to shrink it, put it off to the side, and say, hey, I tried that, but it didn't work. So you want to be reminded of, what doesn't work as well as what does work. So let's go back to that really round head, short body, small body. And actually her legs don't have to be that long. I just wanted the boxier overalls. So I can just go straight to those boxier overalls. See, and I think this is going to get so narrow that the collar of the shirt doesn't really work. So we're going to forget that. We're going to make it a t-shirt somehow. Maybe get that pocket on there with the heart. It's a little detail. And then we're going to have her, let's see, maybe hold her hammer over here this time. Thumb. There's the rest of the fingers. There's the rest of the hand. Just for now, it's not very anatomically correct, but that's okay. These are just the thumbnails. Whoops, let's point the hammer this way. Make it large, oversized. Maybe in this arm she'll be carrying some wood for her next project. Some little birdhouse or something. Put those cuffs on the end, put that cuff on the end of the shirt, cuff on the end of the shirt. She's wrapping that arm around. Shoes, maybe, if my style for this character permits, I can exaggerate the shoes and stick them out that way. And then back to her face, I'm going to cluster her features to keep that sense of youth and cuteness. Maybe she has bigger ears this time. And let's try that set of long braids this time. I think it might be something with this whooshing hair that looks a little more teenager and not as childlike. I might go back to bangs. Again, normally I don't erase, but to save this thumbnail, I'm going to add some bangs. There's something about fringe here that just makes them look a little more youthful. So I'm going to try some really, really long braids this time. Go all the way down to the floor. So that's kind of cute, but I feel like the long feet and the long hair is kind of competing. So I am going to just shrink this one down and try another combination. So I do this about 4 to 10 times when I'm designing a character just to get some options. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the process though so you can see how it turns out in the end.